Hello, Facebook world. I don't think I'm quite live, but I'm going to keep saying hello until... Hello, Facebook world. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to have you guys because this week we are going to be talking about nature's engineers. And in case you have never heard of nature's engineers, in the human world, it's somebody who likes to build things, design things for complex problems. They might build products or machines or systems or structures. They want to know how things or why things work. And usually they have scientific training that has you learning how to do all those things before you become an engineer. But today we're going to be talking about nature's engineers. And we're going to talk about 5 different examples. And during the live, if you have any questions, or if you have any comments, or if you're joining us, I'd love to know if you guys are here. Tiffany and Lily are here, of course, always to help me. If you're watching it on the replay, remember we can also see your comments. Go ahead and like or subscribe to our Facebook page, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like our Facebook page. You probably already have since you're here. And we can respond to anything that you are wondering, and we would just love to know if you are here. So thinking about engineers and looking at the screen, can you think of anything that you see on this screen that might look like engineer? We'll kind of hang out for a second. Stuff specifically in natures. Hi, Debbie. We're talking about engineers this time, Debbie. Do you know any engineers in your life? I'm sure you do in your awesome world of career stuff. So I'm going to move on. But we do have examples that the guys are going to be talking about. The first engineer we're going to talk about is the spider. And people always kind of think they might be creepy or scary, but actually spiders are pretty amazing. In my house, I have a deal. As long as you don't impact my life, like crawl across my lap, you can exist, cohabitate with me in my house. But depending on what kind of spider it is, they will have different kinds of webs. And each web design is to catch insects, but specifically these spiders design webs to catch a certain kind of insect. Some spider webs might be really big and some might be really small. But spiders are very exact on how they make their webs, and everything they do has a reason. And I don't know if you guys know any engineers in your life. That's exactly how an engineer lives their life. Very exact. And everything they do has a reason, because it could cost a lot of money if they didn't have a plan and they just started building stuff. So spiders are very much like human engineers. Their design and material is an engineering masterpiece. Spider silk is said to be 5 times stronger than steel of the same weight. And it acts like no man-made fiber. Research shows that spider webs are actually, if they break 1 or 2 strands, it can actually strengthen the entire web. Spiders are amazing engineers and designers. Our next amazing engineer is probably one you've heard of before. It's the beaver. Beavers build amazing dams out of wood and sticks. If you've ever been to the Outdoor Learning Center before, we actually have a model of a beaver dam that you can climb in and look over the pond. And if you haven't been here, we'd love to have you guys come eventually. Dams completely change their environment and the way that how other animals interact with it. Beaver's dam provides tremendous environmental benefits for wildlife, water quality, and groundwater recharge. The dams slow the flow of water through a stream or other body of water, and beavers lay out wood and mud and make very specific arrangements and patterns to give the dam its strength. If you guys ever get to see them in the wild, they're amazing. They're hard to get to up close. But beavers like to live in part of the dam, and I've had people ask me if beavers don't like the sound of running water, and that's why they build dams. And the truth is they want a perfect dam that doesn't allow any water. They want it to be completely quiet in there. So the more water moving through the dam, the louder the water sound gets. Our next spectacular engineer is actually a plant. You guys can see in some of these pictures. It's a vine, and vines grow up around trees and make huge networks of interwoven walkways for arboreal animals. Remember from an earlier Facebook Live, arboreal means animals that live in trees instead of on the ground. Without vines, many monkeys, sloths, or other climbing animals would have a difficult time getting from tree to tree. These vines are also known as nature's highways. Now, the vines I'm talking about aren't like any vines that we have around here in Spokane. These vines only live in rainforests and jungles. They're actually called Liliana, or Liliana. Good, we had a conversation about how it's pronounced. And they can be huge. They use trees to support themselves as they grow and twist up towards the sun. By using the trees for support, the vines can use and focus all their energy on growing and moving towards the sun instead of trying to use all their energy to stay upright. These vines are so strong, they can support the weight of many animals, including some humans. It's amazing to think how strong these vines are. I know that at my house growing up, my mom mistakenly planted a vine that eventually pulled one of our trees down because it was so strong. And it was not a native vine, so it didn't go so well. The next engineer in nature is the honeybee. We've talked about honeybees quite a bit. Last week we talked about how they were pollinators, but this week we are mentioning them more as engineers. We are going to watch a video, and I'm going to slide down here because my computer just died. Technical difficulties, it's all good. And because they are pollinators, they also like to make honey, and they make their own honeycomb for their honey. But how do they put it into the shape of a hexagon? I don't know, but this video is going to explain more. I'm going to click here because it makes me nervous to click anywhere
else. Honeybees are fascinating creatures for a number of reasons. Their incredible work ethic, the sugary sweet syrup they produce, and their intricate social structure. But another reason is that honeybees are, in fact, excellent mathematicians. Scientists claim that tiny insects can calculate angles and can even comprehend the roundness of the earth. But there's particular mathematical bee genius behind the most important aspect of honeybee life, the hive. Just like humans, bees need food and shelter to stay alive. The hive is not only the bees' home, but doubles as a place to store their honey. Since it's so central to survival, honeybees have to perfect the hive's architectural design. If you examine any piece of honeycomb, you'll see that it's constructed from tightly packed hexagonal or six-sided cells. Of all the possible designs, why do honeybees choose this one? To understand, you need to think like a bee. Bees need a secure place for their entire colony to live. Similarly, there needs to be a place where their nectar can be stored and ripened suitably, until it turns into honey. That means there's a need for some serious space efficiency. A good solution is to build little storage units or cells just big enough for a bee to fit into, which can also double as the containers in which nectar is stored, the bee's very own honey jars. The next thing is to decide what the little cells should be made out of. Bees don't have beaks or arms to pick up things, but they are capable of producing wax. The thing is, producing it is a lot of hard work. Bees have to consume 8 ounces of honey to produce just 1 ounce of wax, so they don't want to waste it. So they need a design that allows them to store the largest possible amount of honey using the least amount of wax. What shape does that? Imagining for a minute that all bees had to attend Architecture Academy and go to math class. Let's say they asked their geometry teacher, what shape would give us the most space to store our honey but require the least amount of wax? And the geometry teacher replied, the shape that you're seeking is the circle, leaving the bees to return to their trial construction site and begin building their honeycomb using circular cells. After a while, some of them might have noticed a problem with their design. Small gaps between the cells. We can't even fit in there. That's wasted space, they might have thought. So, ignoring the geometry lesson and taking matters into their own hands, the bees went back to the drawing board to rethink their beehive design. One suggested triangles. We can use triangles, look, they fit together perfectly. Another bee suggested squares. Finally, a third bee piped up and said, pentagons don't seem to work, but hexagons do. We want the one that will use the least amount of wax and be able to store the most amount of honey. Yes, I think that's the hexagon. Why? It looks more like the circle than the others. But how do we know for sure? To find out, the industrious insect architects calculated the areas of the triangle, the square, and the hexagon, and found that the hexagon was, in fact, the shape that gave them the most storage space. They agreed on an ideal size and returned to work. The space-efficient comb that is a bee's trademark today is probably the result of this trial and error, but over long periods of evolutionary history. However, it paid off. Peek into any hive, with your protective goggles and netting on, of course, and you'll see the end result, a beautiful, compact honeycomb that any architect would have been proud to design.
All right, so now I should really go like this. Sweet. So in the video, I talked about hexagons. Hexagons are found out through nature. I thought it was really interesting that they were saying that the bees went back to the drawing board, which is really funny because it's exactly what an engineer would do. But obviously, bees can't go to a drawing board. But we have lots of hexagons in nature: basalt rocks, pineapples, the middle plates on a tortoise shell like Nelson. Hexagons are everywhere. Can you think, or any of you watching, think of other natural things that are shaped like a hexagon? And if you guys are watching this in the replay, go ahead and just send a comment because you're probably going to be able to Google and find out other examples in nature. But hexagons have 6 sides, and each side is 120 degrees, so the angles are 120 degrees. And the shape is ideal for building because everything has 120 degrees, and the force you put on one side is actually balanced out by forces on the rest of the object. I know that Tiffany has been making some shelves that are hexagon shaped. Maybe we'll show them when you guys come for a field trip someday. And human engineers are actually starting to figure out how stable this shape is, and they're starting to use more 120 degree angles in their design plans. And last but not least, some of our favorite critters are nests. Many animals make nests, and there are so many different kinds. Some birds create huge nests, like the picture on the top. All the birds work to make a big nest, and they live in small apartments that they keep up, kind of like my house. I live in a big house, and my kids live in the other rooms. I don't know if they keep their room up, but it's the same idea. Other birds make round nests that hang in trees, and they only have one hole in them. Those nests are really good at protecting the birds from predators like snakes. There's only one entrance to get in. They can kind of keep an eye on it. These are amazing nests because they're made in a circle shape, and they're made out of grass and hay. But they can also get the nest to hang from a branch. And I don't know about you guys, trying to figure out how they use that to hang all that weight on a branch is really impressive. You and I probably would use a zip tie or a twist tie, but they have figured out how to weave it out of grass using just their beaks. Other nests, like this bald eagle nest, is huge, and they can actually be up to 6 feet wide. That's really cool. We actually have a model of one of these here that if you ever come back, you can get an idea of how big that nest is. What's really impressive about all the nests I've talked about so far is that birds are able to engineer them so they don't fall out of trees, which is crazy, especially if you think about wind and storms and things. But the nests can be very heavy as well. There is a bird called the bowerbird. It's the bird on the bottom right, and it creates a very different looking nest. The male actually uses it to attract a female. I thought this was really fascinating when I was reading about it. So I'm going to talk a little bit about math here, if you guys can imagine. Perspective, yeah. The engineering marvel with the bowerbirds is that they are able to use forced perspective, and if you are a photographer, you might know what that means. but it actually makes things look larger. So I'm going to give you an example. So imagine you're standing across the room from me, and I put some small rocks or stones in front of me, and I put some large rocks behind me, and it looks like the rocks are about the same size. And then that makes me look bigger. Male bowerbirds do this by placing stones near the front of their nest, or the bower as it's called, and large stones near the back. The bowerbird male will then stand in the middle of the two and dance and sing to attract a female. That's cool because the female sees the male as being bigger than he actually is because of this little stone trick. Human architects and engineers use the same technique. If you've ever been to Disneyland or Disney World, Main Street is set up to look using forced perspective, making it seem like Main Street goes on and on forever, and the castle looks huge. We're going to watch a video about how impressive and technical it is to build a nest. Sweet. Let's see. Am I good? I'm looking at you.
Yeah, you're good.
Sweet. Okay. As I have said, birds aren't the only ones who make nests. If you can believe it, animals like primates, chimpanzees, gorillas, and orangutans even make nests, which I did not know. I learned this thanks to Lily. These animals can weigh more than 100 pounds, but still will nest in trees. And we're going to watch a cool video of the orangutan making a nest. There are captions on this, so I'm going to read them in case it's difficult for you guys to read. So, oh my goodness. Gang Yang is building a nest in the Tabian Reserve. You guys can see the leaves are moving there, and that's where he's at. It's part of an orangutan appeal to UK's pioneering. They build carefully constructed nests high in the canopy as a safe place to rest and sleep in. And they're built using strong, rigid branches to form a secure base, and softer, more flexible branches are used for the lining, so kind of cushioning them. They'll bend the branches inwards towards the central part and then weave and layer more to make it both strong and comfortable. And orangutans can build a nest in just a few minutes, which is often up to 100 feet off the ground, which is kind of scary for me to think about building it. Some have been even used, fashioned pillows and blankets for their nests. That's a cool camera. They'll make a new nest to sleep in most nights, although we'll sometimes reuse an old nest and add a little more branches. Sweet. I don't know why it does that. There are so many animals and plants that are awesome engineers, but something we haven't talked about is how humans can use this natural engineering knowledge. When humans use and copy nature, it's called biomimicry. Animals and plants have been using it for millions of years, perfecting their designs and engineering feats, and now scientists and engineers and architects are working together to create new things based on nature. We're going to have a future Facebook Live all about biomimicry, but for now, check out this video on how people have used nature to engineer new things.
For all our reliance on human ingenuity, a number of scientists and engineers are learning design secrets that might be best described as second nature. Faith Saley shows what we mean.
Blink and you'll miss it.
The frog tongue is incredibly fast. It can reach accelerations up to 12 times the acceleration of gravity. To put that into perspective, astronauts going up into space experience 2 to 3 times the acceleration of gravity.
To catch a glimpse of a frog tongue in action, you have to be pretty sharp or determined, both of which might describe Alexis Noel, a bioengineer at Georgia Tech University.
So you can imagine these extreme accelerations that are happening to the insect as it's being yanked back into the mouth, and yet this adhesive on the tongue is still able to maintain grip.
Noel's research into that sticky stuff, frog saliva, began when she stumbled across a video that had gone viral.
And I actually ran across this really funny video of this bullfrog trying to eat insects off of an iPhone screen. Of course, they're fake insects, and they're scrolling down the screen. We thought it was hilarious. And so we started asking these questions like, how is this frog tongue so fast and so sticky? And like, how does it catch these insects in the blink of an eye? Being a mechanical engineer and dabbling in fluid mechanics, we're like, oh, this is a really interesting adhesive question.
Noel hopes that understanding the mechanics of frog saliva could lead to the development of futuristic adhesives. And if that seems far-fetched, then welcome to the world of biomimicry, where scientists look to nature for innovations. The shape of Japan's bullet train, for instance, was inspired by the shape of a kingfisher's beak. These windmill blades were modeled after the fins of a humpbacked whale. But the most ubiquitous biologically inspired innovation of all might be in your closet. In 1941, Swiss engineer Georges de Mestral went for a hike in the Alps and noticed the way burrs adhered to his clothing. Today, the hook and loop fastening system most of us call Velcro is used in thousands of products.
It's actually a new way of inventing. And so chemists and designers and architects and engineers, when they have a problem, they ask what in nature has already solved this problem.
If there's one person to thank for the popularity of biomimicry, it would be Janine Benyus.
You know, the core idea is that life's been on Earth 3.8 billion years, and that's a lot of R&D.
Benyus popularized the term 2 decades ago in her book.
You know, NFL helmets are based on how the woodpecker's skull.
What?
Yeah, the woodpecker has a very particular skull, and people
Just spend some time with her at her home in Montana, and you get the sense nature has taught her to see the world a little differently.
When I look at a tree, I think now that it's pretty amazing chemistry operation going on, right, silently. Once you start thinking this way, you realize that nature is full of technologies. If you think of technologies as just tools for living.
But while the scientific field might be new, there's nothing new about being inspired by nature.
We need new ideas, you know.
But what you're saying is the newest ideas are the oldest ideas.
That's, you know.
And they've been there all along.
Exactly.
By one estimate, biologically inspired innovations could contribute $425 billion to the country's gross domestic product by 2030.
You put porcupine quills in your face.
Yeah, as an example, I mean, what we like to do from time to time some self-experimentation and really get a sense for what it is that we're working with.
It was porcupine quills that pointed scientist Jeff Karp towards a new design for a medical staple.
So it was known at the time that quills have these backwards-facing barbs. When you try to remove the quill, the barb catches on the tissue fibers and then kind of displays out to the side, so it's even grabbing even more. And that's where it gets its incredible gripping force. And so this gave us inspiration for a new staple.
At his lab in Boston's Brigham and Women's Hospital, Karp is creating new medical devices using some old technology. Very old technology. Slug slime was a starting point for a medical glue that works in wet environments.
This is incredibly strong. It's holding bone together.
The way jellyfish tentacles fan out to ensnare plankton inspired a filter to capture cancer cells in blood.
There's literally, hundreds of millions of years of research and development that's happening all around us. And if a creature or a plant is not able to come up with a solution, then it becomes extinct. And so, in essence, we're surrounded by solutions, which I see as ideas for solving problems.
Can our technologies be as elegant and as graceful as those in the natural world? And if we hold ourselves to that standard, if we literally take the natural world as our standard, it really ups our game. It's something to aspire to, but it already exists.
I was just wondering if I could.
For all our reliance on human ingenuity,
Okay, so thanks for joining us today. I learned a lot from that video. Basically, it's telling me that animals and plants are a lot smarter than you and I, and they've been around a lot longer and figured out how to do things better. So open your eyes as you're walking around. Look how animals and plants are doing things and maybe find solutions to a problem you might have. We're going to take the next couple weeks off for spring break and prepping for spring break kind of stuff. So if you guys, we're going to put some of our replays of our other lives we've had, some popular ones. If there's a live that you like more than another one, make sure you comment and let us know. Hope you guys get to go outside and look for nature engineers, maybe spider webs or beavers, or find a new engineer in nature. And we love photographs. So if you guys find something cool, make sure you share it here on our Facebook page or on any of our platforms. Have a great day, and thank you for joining us. Bye!